'Cause that's the bottom line. 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
Hey guys, it's the Bottom Line View here, and guess what? It's right around the corner. NFL season is coming up, and you know what that means. I gotta put out my season predictions. I'm going to have a pretty lengthy video here, go through the AFC, each division, NFC, each division. I went through every team's schedule, wins, losses. I'm going to give you my best bets for the season this year, just who I think is going to make the playoffs, what the playoff matchups will be, who will be winning the MVP, Rookie of the Year, all the awards. And basically, I'm going to give you a little preview for each team. So, starting in the AFC, we have the AFC East. The Patriots have been ruling that division for a long time. Ever since Tom Brady has been there, the Patriots have been running the show in the AFC East, and really there hasn't been much competition other than really the Jets a couple seasons and the Dolphins for maybe one. The Bills have been at the bottom of that division from as long as I can remember. The Patriots, I do have winning the division. I think they'll improve upon last season's total of 12-4, and they will finish 14-2 this season, maybe 13-3 or 12-4, but they never really lose more than 4 games. So I'm going with 2 this season, because they did add the additions in the secondary with Darelle, Revis, the biggest signing of the offseason. They also added Brandon Browner. They have the receivers in one more year in their system, which will help Tom progress. As you've seen in the preseason, they have looked pretty good throughout the preseason. And I think they get their injuries back and improve on their record. Barring something crazy happening to the team, like Tom Brady going down, this team will make the playoffs and will be one of the top 3 seeds in the AFC. The next team I have finishing second would be the New York Jets. I have the New York Jets finishing 8-8. They actually almost made the playoffs last season, which was quite shocking because everyone expected them to maybe be a 4 or 5 win team, but they came out and I think they finished 9-7 or 8-8, and they were really close to making it in. I think they beat the 2 last opponents that was necessary to get in, but chips didn't fall the right way for them. So this year, I don't see them getting into the playoffs. I don't have them getting into the playoffs. I could see them getting into the playoffs, though. At 8-8, that's a pretty solid record, especially with Geno Smith at quarterback, who is unproven. You have new weapons this season. Adding Eric Decker is big. Chris Johnson, I think he'll have a very good season. Eric Decker, not sold on as a number 1 wide receiver. We'll see. If Geno doesn't perform, they do have Mike Vick, who is a proven NFL quarterback. Even with all the injuries that he has, at a backup position, he could surprise some people. Defensively, they were very good last year against the run, and they will continue that this year. They have a fantastic defensive line. Linebackers are solid. Their secondary is what worries me from really making the jump into the playoffs, because Antonio Cromartie is no longer there as their starting corner, so they really didn't add anybody. So they're really banking on Milner to be the man there, and really he hasn't looked like it so far in the preseason and training camp, as I've seen and read. So I have the Jets finishing 8-8 and just missing the playoffs. The Dolphins I have at 7-9. Now the Dolphins are tricky because on paper, they look like a very solid team, but it all comes down to how Tannehill plays. They definitely improved their offensive line, which was poor, very poor last year. Tannehill will improve his performance. Another season to get used to his receivers, get used to his offensive line. The new offensive line will help. They added Marino in the backfield, which will help to a degree. I know I had him as a bust in fantasy. Don't pick him in fantasy. But he might improve the run game there in Miami. The defense was pretty solid last season. And I expect it to be in the middle of the pack. So really, this is a really mediocre, average team, and that's exactly what I have them as 7-9. Just a little notch below the Jets, but they have, I believe, more potential than the Jets. The reason why I have the Jets higher than the Dolphins is really Rex Ryan is a fantastic coach. He's always put the Jets in the best situations, and they really squeak out some tough wins. The Dolphins don't seem to squeak out those tough wins, and the Jets really give the Patriots fits sometimes. The Dolphins did beat the Patriots last season. I don't see them beating them this year. The Jets, I have them beating the Patriots one game. The Patriots, I have their other loss being to the Packers. The Jets, I have losses to the Packers, the Bears, at San Diego, Denver, New England once, at Kansas City, at Buffalo, and at Miami. The Dolphins, I have losses the first week to the Patriots, at Buffalo, at Oakland, versus Green Bay, at Chicago, at Detroit, at Denver, at New York, at New England, and that's it. So it's really tough for me to predict. It's really tough for somebody to predict a schedule, but that's where I thought the losses would be. On to the Bills now. The Bills could be a good team, but they just don't have the quarterback, and I'm not sold on E.J. Manuel as the guy there in Buffalo. They do have the weapons. They have a young core on the offensive side. C.J. Spiller is an explosive back. Their defense is very underrated in my opinion, and I think they could be a top 12 defense this year. But E.J. Manuel, it's all about the quarterback in nowadays NFL. 5-11, I'm going to give them, with losses to the Bears, the Chargers, at the Texans, at the Lions, at the Jets, at Miami, at Denver, Green Bay, Oakland, and New England. I think that's a tough schedule. I do have them pulling out wins against Minnesota, Kansas City, the Jets, Cleveland, and Miami. So they could improve upon that, but really I say a 4-12 to 6-10 season for the Bills. So the AFC East, Patriots first, Jets second, Dolphins third, Bills fourth. The AFC North is the most interesting division, I think, in the NFL this season. You have 4 teams that could potentially be first this year in this division, which is kind of crazy. You know, yeah, you say the Browns, really, they don't have much talent. Josh Gordon's not going to be there. But Brian Hoyer, I believe in Brian Hoyer as the starting quarterback. Do I think they will win the division? No, I think they finish last. But they will give solid competition, especially with that defense. The defense is very solid and can pull out wins for the Browns. So if Brian Hoyer plays the way he did last year, this could be a surprise team. But I have them going 6-10, which isn't bad in a division where the rest of the teams are 8-8 or up. So I have them losing to at Pittsburgh versus New Orleans, at Tennessee, at Jacksonville, at Cincinnati, at Atlanta, at Buffalo, and versus Indianapolis. Then we got the Steelers, which is another interesting team. So this division is really interesting. Just hold on for a second here. The Steelers have LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell, 2 running backs who could potentially get suspended. That really hurts their chances at making the playoffs. It depends how long the suspension is for. Do I think the defense is good enough to hold up until that happens? I don't know. I don't really believe in that defense, but one person I do believe in is Ben Roethlisberger. I think he's a proven good quarterback, and he can carry a team to a certain degree. The Steelers their defense was bad last year. They were one of the worst defenses last season. I think they improved this year. They finished 8-8. Did they finish 8? I think they finished 8-8 last year too. But this year, given that the running backs might be suspended, I think 8-8 is a good number, especially because I think the division is going to be better than it was last season. So 8-8 for the Steelers. They do squeak into the playoffs, I think, 6th seed. The Ravens, I have 9-7 winning the division over the Bengals, who also finished 9-7. Now, where I give the Ravens the edge, I think they didn't lose as much. They actually gained in free agency. The Bengals lost 2 coaches who are very important to their team. They lost their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. The Ravens only gained, really. They drafted a guy who I think is going to be a solid middle linebacker. They gained Steve Smith, and I think that's going to help Joe Flacco out. He's got the weapons. Ray Rice is back this season. I think he'll have a decent season this year. As well as Bernard Pierce. You got Dennis Pitta back. Owen Daniels also is on that team. So with the weapons around, I think that's enough for Joe Flacco. And the Ravens defense, I never underestimate them. I think they win the division this year. The Bengals, 9-7. Why I say that? I don't believe in Andy Dalton. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think he's a very average quarterback with what used to be a very good supporting cast. I think they lost a lot on defense. Their coaches will hurt them, but I think they still squeeze into the playoffs given that the AFC is so weak and that they are still talented, but young at the same time. So, Ravens win the division, Bengals finish 2nd, Steelers finish 3rd. That's my prediction. Browns finish 4th. 3 teams going to the playoffs out of the AFC North, and that will be an exciting division to watch, really. The AFC South, the Indianapolis Colts are going to completely destroy this division, I think. Just like last season, the other 3 teams aren't fit for playoffs or even close to that. I think the Colts finish 12-4 this year. The Titans finish 5-11. And the Texans finish 4-12. Jags finish 3-13. The Jags do have talent. They could be a team to surprise some people because everybody thinks the Jags are automatically going to be awful every season. The Titans, if Jake Locker stays healthy, is the key. Might be decent. They have some good players over there, but their running back, his supporting cast, really, he only really has Kendall Wright to rely on. Delaney Walker is decent. I don't believe in their running backs, so I think they'll still finish in 2nd though, just because Jake Locker is the only quarterback that I like more than Chad Henne or whoever starts for the Texans. I know they have Fitzpatrick, but they were playing Keenum and they're playing a bunch of other guys. So the Texans have the best defense out of the 3, which I think will give them 4 wins. The Titans have the best offense out of the Jags. So this could go any way, but I have the Colts, Titans, Texans, Jags. And three of the teams will be in the top 10 picking for the NFL draft. The Colts I have at 12-4. They may not be a team that deserves to be 12-4 because that's how good they are, but their schedule, especially with their division, they'll run the table in their division and go 6-0. So that's an automatic 6 wins. So if you think about it, they're going 6-4 for the rest of their schedule. But I think they could surprise some teams this season. Andrew Luck's only going to improve, and I believe in him a whole lot. Their receivers are good. Their defensive backs are pretty decent. They need another pass rusher, though, which I think is going to hurt them. I like the addition of DeQuell Jackson, the linebacker. I think that will help them, too. So I think their defense will be a bit better. Luck will be better. 12-4 for the Colts. and an easy schedule. So, like I said, Colts, Titans, Texans, Jags. AFC West. This is a division that had 3 playoff teams last season, and I only see 1 returning. And that would be the Denver Broncos, who I think are going to finish second in the AFC behind the New England Patriots at 13-3, mostly because they play the NFC West, which is known to be the toughest division in the NFL. Will it be this year? I don't know. But I do have them losing to one of these games, rather versus San Fran or at Kansas City. Then I have them also losing to New England in New England and losing at Seattle. So I think one of those games of Kansas City or San Fran could be a loss, and I think New England and Seattle will beat them. So 13-3, the Broncos will be a powerhouse this year again. Peyton Manning will put up fantastic numbers once again. The Kansas City Chiefs I have finishing second, but not the same record they had last year. Not even close. I think they finished 7-9 this year. I think they had way too many losses, a bad free agency. I don't believe in Alex Smith as much as other people do. I believe in Andy Reid's scheme, but can Alex Smith carry a defense that may not be as good as it was last year? I think they do have potential to make the playoffs, don't get me wrong, but I have them going 7-9. Very tough schedule this season. Don't see them making the playoffs. The Chargers, same thing. I have them at 6-10. They're slightly less talented on the defensive side of the ball, but have a better offense than the Chiefs, in my opinion. Still finished 6-10. Tough schedule again. The reason why those two teams won't be seeing the playoffs this year. The Raiders, I have improving last year, 5-11. The Raiders did improve their roster this season, so I expect them to have a better season than last year, but still don't see them making anywhere close to the playoffs. So, for the playoffs in the AFC, I have the New England Patriots finishing first, the Denver Broncos finishing second, the Indianapolis Colts finishing third, the Baltimore Ravens finishing fourth, the Cincinnati Bengals finishing fifth, and the Pittsburgh Steelers finishing sixth. So that gives you matchups of the Ravens and Bengals in the wild card round, and the Colts and Steelers in the wild card round as well. Those are interesting games. I'll get to the playoffs later after I do the NFC. The NFC is the better conference this year, and it was last year, and it will continue to be. And that just means that some better teams that could belong in the playoffs won't make it because the NFC is so tough and their schedules just don't allow them to really reach their full potential. So the NFC East is the most famous division of all the NFL. You have fan favorites of Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Washington Redskins, Philadelphia Eagles. Who will make the playoffs? I have the Philadelphia Eagles once again making the playoffs this season at a 10-6 record. Just barely getting by the Washington Redskins at 9-7, the New York Giants at 8-8, and the Dallas Cowboys at 7-9. I have America's team finishing last in the division this season. It's not tough to see why. It's their defense. Their defense is absolute garbage. They have no players that they have barely enough of their offense or their defensive starters that belong as defensive starters in the NFL to begin with. Their offense is great. Tony Romo is a good quarterback, and he's capable of winning a lot of games for a team. He can't carry a defense that is as bad as the Dallas Cowboys defense to the playoffs, especially with that tough schedule and that tough division. The Giants are pretty bad. They are bad as well. Eli Manning has looked even worse than the Cowboys have looked, and that's pretty bad. The Giants' defense, though, I think is slightly better than the Cowboys, or the defense is what makes up for the Cowboys' offense, and they will win them a couple games, I think. That's basically the difference between the Giants and the Cowboys. The Giants kind of finds ways at end of the game to squeak out victories when the Cowboys throw away victories into the trash can. So we got 9-7 Washington, who is a team with immense potential. They have a huge amount of potential with RG3 under center, giving the ball to Alfred Morris, throwing deep to Deshaun Jackson or Pierre Garçon, along with Jordan Reed. So many weapons on that offense. That offense could be one of the best in the league if RG3 plays to his potential. Their defense I like this year. I think it's pretty good. Their D-backs aren't good, aren't up to snuff, I guess you could say, but I like their front seven a lot. The Eagles, their defense is a question mark, but with Chip Kelly, that he's the best coach in the NFC East. Don't mistake it. And he will find a way to get the Eagles into the playoffs. Nick Foles is the real deal. Jeremy Maclin has looked very good. Riley Cooper's still there. You got LaShawn McCoy, added Darren Sproles, who's going to help the team. Their defense has looked pretty bad so far in preseason, but it is preseason, people. Chip Kelly will find a way to hide the holes of their defense and make it into the playoffs, especially with that high-flying offense that they have, and one of the best running backs in the league. The NFC North is another interesting division, but I think it's the best division in the NFL. You have the Packers, who I think are going to win the division at 12-4 and potentially go to the Super Bowl this season. The only losses I have them is at Seattle, at Chicago, at New Orleans, and the last game of the season versus Detroit, who Detroit will be trying to get into the playoffs. The Vikings I have last at 2-14, not because they're a 2-14 team, but because their schedule and the tough NFC. The Bears I have at second in the division at 10-6, also making the playoffs at the sixth seed. So that's another team that I could see going pretty far. They actually, they did get destroyed and dismantled versus the Seattle Seahawks, but if you look at them on paper, they're a team that should be pretty capable this season. They have a good offense. They have Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, Matt Forte. That's enough. That's a Pro Bowl offense right there. They added a couple guys on the defensive line, Houston and Allen. Sorry, Peppers is on Green Bay. And I think their defense did get better overall. So that will help. Their defense wasn't very good last year, and they were kind of plagued by injuries. The Lions, I have at 9-7. Their offense is one of my favorite in the NFL, and that will give them at least 7 wins. Just by itself, even if their defense is the worst in the league. But their defense will improve, I think, this season as well, which adds up to a 9-7 record. I think Stafford will decrease his turnovers and interception rate because he throws so many interceptions. But this year, I think they tone it down a bit. They spread the ball more. They run the ball a little bit more, and that adds to more wins. So I have the Packers finishing first in the division at 12-4, making the playoffs. The Bears finishing second in the division at 10-6, making the playoffs with the 6th seed. The Lions just missing the playoffs at 9-7, and the Vikings getting the first pick in the NFL draft next season at 2-14. Next, we have the NFC South. Division that had 2 playoff teams last year in the Saints and Panthers. I only see one going back to the playoffs, and that is the division winner, the New Orleans Saints. I have finishing atop the NFC at 13-3. I think they have the easiest schedule out of all the top tier teams, and they improved their defense quite a bit. The Carolina Panthers I have finishing second at 8-8. I just don't believe that Cam can carry this team as far as many people, or as far as they were last year. The defense might be just as good as last year, but it hasn't looked the same really as last year. It's still very good though. They lost Captain Munnerlyn, which is really a concern for me, and they lost their 2 starting safeties. But they did replace them with capable players. The thing that gets me is their receivers. I just don't trust Jericho Cotchery and Jason Avant to come through. I really do like Kelvin Benjamin, though. I think he's going to be a good player. And they don't have the running game to really carry the offense. So I think 8-8 is a reasonable number for the Panthers. 6-10 for the Bucs, who I have finishing over the Falcons, who are going to finish 5-11. The Falcons still need to fix their defense. And Matt Ryan isn't a guy that's going to carry their team. 6-10 for the Bucs. I think they have a very good young core, a good defense, and a good enough offense to get you 6 wins. So Saints first, Panthers second, Bucs third, Falcons fourth. Next we have the NFC West, the last division in the NFL. Probably the second best division in the NFL in my opinion, just coming behind the NFC North, but was the best last year. They had 2 teams that made the playoffs who were the 2 best teams in the NFC, and then they had the Cardinals who almost made the playoffs. This year I have 2 teams making the playoffs again, Seattle and San Fran. I think San Fran takes a slight decline this season, though. Their defense took quite a hit this offseason, and Bowman not coming back for a while will hurt. Seattle finishes first. They looked excellent in their 3rd game in the preseason. I think they continue what they had last year, and make it as far as the NFC Championship game. The Arizona Cardinals, they have the potential to go to the Super Bowl, but I think they get stopped at the NFC Championship game. The Arizona Cardinals finish 8-8, and the Rams finish 7-9. Not having Sam Bradford is going to hurt a lot. I had the Rams as a potential team that could make a run for the playoffs, but not anymore. The Cardinals will finish slightly ahead of them. Still a good defense and a better offense than last season, in my opinion. So, that's the NFC. What we have is, first is the Saints. Second, we have Seattle. Third, we have the Packers. Fourth, the Eagles. Fifth, the 49ers. And sixth, the Bears. So that gives you matchups of of the Packers facing the Bears and the 49ers facing the Eagles in Philadelphia, which would both be interesting games. So let's get to this playoff thing here. Playoff prediction. Wild card weekend. We got the Colts and Steelers, Ravens and Bengals, Packers and Bears, and Eagles and 49ers. I have the Colts moving on and the Ravens moving on in wild card weekend from the AFC, as well as the 49ers going on the road against the Eagles, beating them, and the Packers beating the Bears at home. So that gives you matchups of the 49ers at the Saints, the Packers at Seattle, a rematch, 2 rematches from the regular season. The Colts at the Broncos, and the Ravens at the Patriots. Those are interesting games. The Colts beat the Broncos last year. They play them during the regular season, and the Ravens always give the Patriots fits. I think the Patriots move on to the AFC Championship game to face the Broncos. I think those 2 teams are clear ahead of everybody in the AFC, and they're talented enough to win those games, especially at home. The NFC is where it gets interesting. I think the 2 road teams beat the 2 home teams. The Seattle home presence stops here. The Packers end their run to the Super Bowl for the 2-time back-to-back Super Bowl champs for Seattle. It's not going to happen. I say the Packers move to the NFC Championship to take on the other road team, the 49ers, who I think have a strong enough defense to beat the Saints at home. The Packers, they'll have a rematch of their first game of the season where I think they do lose to Seattle, but that will give them sort of a sense in what to come in and what they can learn from that game. I think that's going to be a very close game and a game that the Packers learn from and they use to their advantage in the NFC divisional game. The 49ers at the Packers. Very hard to win at Lambeau. I think the Packers defense improved this year enough for them to advance to the Super Bowl. I'm a big believer in Aaron Rodgers, and I believe he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I say the Packers meet the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, and the Packers win the Super Bowl this season versus the New England Patriots in a very close, high-scoring game, which will go down as one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time. I could be wrong, though. I could easily see Seattle winning the Super Bowl. I could easily see the Broncos winning the Super Bowl, even the Saints. And I think it's between those teams, even the 49ers as well. I don't see the Colts making the jump yet. I think it's between the Patriots, Broncos, Packers, Niners, Saints. Those 5 teams have the potential to win the Super Bowl. Any other team, just don't see it. So those are my playoff predictions. I have the Packers beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl, which I think will be a great game. Now, on to the awards for the season. I have the MVP going to Drew Brees, the number 1 seed in the NFC being the Saints. I think Drew Brees carries them to a great record this season and puts up big stats as he always does. Offensive Player of the Year goes to Peyton Manning. Easy choice, but went with it. Defensive Player of the Year, I have Darelle Revis, who I think returns as the number 1 cornerback in the NFL and shows us what he can do in New England. Comeback Player of the Year, I have Rob Gronkowski, coming off his injuries. I think he has a big season this year and doesn't get hurt. Let's hope. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I have the Panther receiver Kelvin Benjamin, who kind of a surprise to some people, but I have him winning the Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jadeveon Clowney. He is the real deal. Strong, fast, smart enough player to come in as a rookie and dominate. Jadeveon Clowney will be a bright spot for the Texans. Passing yards leader, I have Drew Brees. Passing touchdowns leader, I have Peyton Manning. Rushing yards leader, I have Jamaal Charles. Rushing touchdowns leader, Adrian Peterson. Receiving yards leader, Bryant, who I think will have a big season this year. Receiving touchdowns leader, Megatron, Calvin Johnson. The sacks leader, J.J. Watt. And the interceptions leader, Patrick Peterson. So all those players will have great seasons this year and get their awards respectively. Those are my predictions for the awards this season. So let me know what you think. Let me know who you guys think is going to win the Super Bowl, who you think is going to win the MVP award, etc. Who you think is going to make the playoffs. Let me know what you think about your own team and how they're going to do this year. And keep it locked on the Bottom Line View for weekly NFL videos. I think since I'm a Patriots fan, I'm going to do weekly analysis on the Patriots games. If you're Patriots games, then definitely check them out. Or Patriots fans, check them out. And I'll do probably the biggest games of the week and reviews and stuff. And I'll also have weekly predictions because everything can change from now. Who knows? The Tampa Bay Bucs could make the playoffs this year or somebody like that. So nobody knows what's going to happen in the NFL, and that's what everybody loves about it. So guys, this has been the Bottom Line View. Peace.